Do you remember the first time you ate meat?
I first started incorporating eggs and then a little bit of fish, and then I had the liver before I had the steak.
Okay, that's the way to do it. Was there like, maybe there wasn't, but was there like a euphoric moment when you ate the liver or when you ate the eggs or these nutrient-rich foods came back into your diet? Did you feel it?
What is so bizarre to me is the emotional response that happened immediately when I was eating meat again. Like I was cutting up the steak and bawling my eyes out because intuitively I knew that it was like the right step to improving my health, like incorporating meat again. But like I had just been so programmed to believe that meat was like hurting, the planet and really bad for like our ecosystems and the animals. And like it was this emotional tie that I had. Like I felt like I was a bad person for eating this meat, even though it was like the best thing for me at the time. So yeah, the first time I had meat and the times afterwards, like I just had to work through the guilt that had been programmed into me. And I was like crying.
All those vegan documentaries just like getting in your head.
Yeah. And even though I'd done the research and known that, these vegan documentaries are misleading, I still had that like programming wired into me.
It's so hard to unprogram ourselves, isn't it? Like it's crazy to think about all the things that we believe that we don't know why we believe them. I mean, I talk to people all the time and different things come up. I'll tell people like, an interesting one is I'll tell people, I don't use toothpaste. And their eyes get wide like this. They're like dinner sauce. We don't use toothpaste. I'm thinking, why do you use toothpaste? And they just don't even understand.
What's in your toothpaste? I never considered.
Yeah, it's so interesting to talk to people and to just say to them like, I don't use toothpaste, and to see what happens. And then to ask them a question like, why do you use toothpaste? And it's usually a question back to me, like, isn't that necessary to clean your teeth? And I think you don't even know, and you're using it. And then, like you said, what's in your toothpaste, or what's in your deodorant, or what's in your skin moisturizer, or what's in your anything, right?
Where is your food coming from?
Yes.
It's all the constant questioning. We just don't know. We just accept. There's so much that we accept.
Yeah. And people, I think people will have the same reaction if I say, I eat a lot of red meat, and they don't eat red meat, or they don't eat a lot of red meat. Isn't red meat bad for you? And you think, well, why do you believe that red meat is bad for you? And people, I just think that there's a lot of us believe things and we don't know why we believe them. And I'm sure that I have beliefs that are unexamined and sort of untested, but it's interesting to think as a human, how many of the things that we use to navigate our life every day are decisions based on programming that isn't really ours.
Totally. I laugh because I recently went to visit my parents and I was spending some time with them, and I was eating like eggs every day. And I hear from my dad, isn't cholesterol bad for you? And I know that he's just like referencing an ad about eggs that happened on TV like 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like cholesterol is bad narrative is being pushed so much. It's still pushed now, but like, they used to have ads on TV about it.
About how bad it was.
Yeah.
Did you ask your dad, why do you believe that? Or what do you think? Do you think that that's the programming that he has? Does he know?
I just told him that, the narrative changes and, there's updated information now. And it's hard. It's hard when somebody's believed something for so long. But
my parents are both 72, and it's hard to help them make changes. I've almost stopped at this point because I think that at some point, if we hold a belief long enough, it just becomes harder and harder for us to change it. And so how old were you when you watched the vegan documentaries?
I would have been like 16.
Okay.
Yeah.
Impressionable.
Yeah.
And then how old were you when you went vegan?
Still like 16. I went vegetarian for a few months and then decided that, that wasn't good enough. And dairy and the eggs were also as harmful. And yeah.
And then you started eating meat around 20?
Yeah. A little bit later, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. You can imagine how hard it would be for somebody who's much older who'd been vegan for a long time to change those perspectives. So I guess maybe in this place, thankfully, your brain was still somewhat plastic in your early 20s and you escaped what could have been a bad path. But what would you say to someone, and I don't know if there's many vegans or vegetarians watching this, but I think that this ethical empathy argument is talked about a lot, right? This idea that eating animal products is not kind to animals. You must have gone through this with like the tears coming down your face and everything. Like, what would you say to someone? How do you think about that now?
I would say that I prioritize my health and my fertility and my nutrition over an animal's life. Like, I chose to prioritize it. Like, I know a lot of sick vegans who just kind of tolerate the symptoms because they care more about the animals than they do for us. But, you know, my fertility was really like a priority for me. But I also went down the rabbit hole of like, you know, not all meat is considered equal. Like, a factory farm animal is not the same as, you know, my local dairy farmer that, you know, can sell you the whole cow and support that nose to tail nutrition and provide like a species appropriate diet for the animal. Like, they're two very different products essentially at the end of the day. So yeah, when I was in the position to be able to support, like, I'm very privileged, but I went through that journey of only supporting like organic local farmers and, you know, trying to source the most ethical meat products that I could.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's this great book that I read a number of years ago called The Tracker by Tom Brown. And he's this man who grew up in the Pine Barrens of New Jersey, and he was apprenticed to this Apache Indian and got to like have this amazing childhood where he basically ran around the woods and learned Native American ethics, fighting tactics, hunting tactics, and engagement with the land from this Native American, sort of at like the nadir of like, you know, like the end of like the Native American sort of like history, right? Because it was probably the end of that Native American's family, and like their cultures are being lost in this time. I think he was in the 70s. So it was like a couple generations ago that he was doing this. And, you know, many people know now that on the reservations in the Southwest and other parts of the United States, like Native American traditions are pretty much being lost. So it's really cool to see this Apache, this Native American Apache man passing down his knowledge to that man's grandson, and then Tom Brown, who were friends together. And there's this amazing scene in the book where Tom Brown kills his first animal by hand. So it's a deer. He's 9 years old. He's in a tree with a knife, and he drops out of the tree and hits this sort of lame fawn and kills this baby deer. And he brings this deer back to camp. And this Apache Indian man, who they call grandfather, says, "Why are you crying?" Because he's just sobbing. And he says, and I'm paraphrasing, I don't remember the exact interaction, but he says, "I'm so sad that I killed this animal." And this Apache Indian man says something that's always stuck with me, which is that in order for something to live, something else must die. This is the way of life. And he says, when you understand that the life in a blade of grass is the same as like the life in an animal, then you realize you can't exist in life without killing things. And this is something we should be grateful for and understand that we're part of this cycle of life and death. But I've always felt like these ethical vegan arguments or vegetarian arguments, mostly the vegan arguments, are sort of this like false prioritization of like neurological evolution. Just because a cow has a brain and walks on 4 legs and moves, who's to say that the life force in that cow is different than the kale plant that you're killing? Or what about all of the microorganisms in the field that you're disrupting and the worms? Like, the cow's life is more valuable than a mouse's life. And it's like, well, I mean, I think we would, as humans, like a reasonably empathetic human, would feel bad about just maliciously killing a mouse or a vole or a snake. Why do we prioritize a bigger animal? It's kind of just this fake human construct, right? And I think that like this idea of buy kills and the fact that when you take a field or a forest, that you have to chop the forest, you're killing all the trees. So all of that life force is going back to the life force well or wherever it goes. And then all of the animals that depend on those trees are gone. Then you have to cut the trees up and you have to till the soil. And then you have to kill everything that's in the soil that you're tilling. And then all the rabbits, all the voles, all the mice, all the badgers and, you know, snakes, and all these lives are disrupted, all the rabbits. But we're saying, no, that's not bad. But what is bad is killing a cow that grazes on the grass and lives a life and will die, you know, as part of their life cycle anyway. It's interesting. I think that a lot of the vegan and vegetarian ethos and ethics are well-intentioned. They're just not, they don't seem philosophically mature to me or like finished, right? Like, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's that disconnection with our food chain and with these processes.
Yes.
You basically just said everything.
But it's true. You bring up a good point that I think that if more people hunted, they would understand this. If more people lived closer to the land and saw how food was produced, they would understand this. And so I think that one of the things that keeps coming up for me in my own life as I'm thinking about where humans are in 2023 is that the more that we are separated from the way that we've lived as humans for hundreds of thousands of years, the more problems we have. And there's this great celebration of like technology, and technology does amazing things. I mean, people go to hospitals and they have technology that can be life-saving in the moment. But at the same time, I think technology, and we're always developing technologies, spears are technologies, bows and arrows are technologies, fires are technologies. But this idea that all progress is good, it doesn't make sense. I don't think it's always good for humans. Like I think that things that pull us away or that cause us to have amnesia or forget where we've come from as humans, they often result in more suffering long-term. Like we're not eating the same foods, we're not living in the same way, we're not walking outside in the forest. I just think about, I mean, now that you're here in Costa Rica, you get this, right? And I'm sure you got this in Australia because I saw your videos in the woods, but like, I think that humans being in nature, this sounds so trite when I say it, but I think it's so true. Like humans being in nature is irreplaceable. You just can't do it. I don't think humans can function well without that. Have you spent any time in like a big city recently?
I briefly spent some time in Madrid on my way here and in Dubai.
Okay, what was Dubai like? How long were you in Dubai?
Just a week. It's certainly not for me.
But a week in Dubai, okay.
More than enough time.
How did you feel in a week in Dubai?
Pretty ungrounded. Hey, I'm not really like a city person. It just feels like an amusement park for adults.
And I think it kind of is, right?
Yeah.
Or sort of, I went to New York recently and it felt like, I felt like outer space. It just felt like there was this, like I must be attached to some tether, you know, to like the ship, like the mothership. I must have some tether because I'm in this completely alien environment among cities and buildings and concrete. And it's very hard to get connected to that. And maybe that's just my personal construct, but like I literally went to the East River every day and stuck my foot in the Hudson River or the East River.
To get some connection.
Just to get some grounding. It's gross. And you know, one of my friends is from New York. He's like, that's absolutely disgusting. But I was like, all I could do. I mean,